Hi, I'm Alison from Alison's Astrology, and I'm here to talk to you today about the week that begins on the 2nd of March and finishes on the 9th of March. So, welcome to a tumultuous month in this year of transition. Big astrology this month. And I'm going to look first at the week ahead and then I'll go on to give you an outline at some of the big astrology that's coming up later, just so you've got an idea about what's going on. So for the week ahead, the first thing that's happening is that Venus is turning retrograde. And by the time you're listening to this, that will have already happened. It was very early in Europe on Sunday morning, Sunday the 2nd of March. And it happens at 9/10 degrees Aries, actually 10, but I mean 9 and 10 Aries, these are important degrees. So pay attention, they come up again and again. And Venus retrograde, well, Venus, of course, is about our relationships, it's about our values, it's about what we desire. So when we have Venus retrograde, it's a time for re-examining and rethinking those things. Re-examining our relationships, reconsidering perhaps what we truly value. And in Aries, Venus is in Aries, there's a focus on us and what we desire and what we want as individuals. And this could be linked to the family or home, because Mars ruler Aries is in Cancer, and you always look at the ruler as well to give you an extra layer of interpretation. So yeah, so this could be a time when we're rethinking things, friends maybe as well as partners. How is the relationship? Do we need things to rebalance a little bit? Do we need to readjust? Or are there, in fact, relationships that are just no longer serving us? That may be something we need to consider as well. Is there a balance of power that we need to change? And if there is, then maybe we need to look at Aries' opposite sign of Libra and bring in that opposition and actually start to negotiate and work out how we can change the balance of power and yeah, and get a better sense of a better sense of balance. So I'm just going to share the screen and show you the chart for this week. So here we've got that Venus that I was talking about. There she is, just turned retrograde, look, on Sunday at 10 degrees of Aries. So that's an interesting degree, remember it. Okay, so if you've got a lot of planets or angles at in the Venus-ruled signs of Taurus or Libra, then you're going to be especially affected by this retrograde, because that's your ruling planet that's kind of turning back in on itself a little bit. So it might be a time for you to rest and reflect and think things through, not push forward, just take things steady. And you can do that right up until the 13th of April, actually, when Venus will finally turn direct at 24 degrees Pisces. And so the degrees of this Venus retrograde cycle between 9 or 10 degrees of Aries and 24 Pisces are actually especially important this year, because they're also the degrees of the eclipses that are coming up in March. And that's quite odd, actually. That doesn't normally happen. It's interesting. So check out where Aries and Pisces are in your birth chart and refer to the list of houses that's in the blurb below. And then you can see which area of life this is mostly going to affect which area of your life this is mostly going to affect. With Venus retrograde, what we sometimes get as well is we can find old relationships coming back into our lives. And that can sometimes be concerned with the Venus cycle of 8 years before, because they kind of repeat every 8 years, and you get the Venus star point, which is a whole other thing, but it's very interesting. So this was March 2017. I mean, it sounds like a long time ago, but if you can think back to that time, reflect on where you were then and how this might pick up actually some of the themes that were going on in your life at that time. And maybe you'll even discover that somebody who you hooked up with at that time, or a friend that you got to know, comes back into your life now. These things do happen. It's interesting. So Venus retrograde, traditionally not a great time to get a makeover or plastic surgery. because obviously Venus is to do with beauty and appearance. And if she's retrograde, then, she's not functioning quite as directly and as easily as she should, or she does when she's going forwards anyway. And it might be best not to get married too, because again, with the symbolism of relationships connected to Venus. But if you are getting married this month, then don't panic, because you do have Mars in family-oriented Cancer there to support you, giving the other layer. So that's very tribal and familial. So that's quite nice. And interestingly, Mercury later on this month, not this week, but on the 15th of March, also turns retrograde at that 9 degrees of Aries. So it really is a power point this year. And if you do have planets or angles around 9 degrees of Aries or the other cardinal signs, which are Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer, then pay extra attention, because there are likely to be events coming in around the eclipse and around Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde, which could be important to your ongoing life journey. I think this is definitely going to be an important time for you if you have planets or angles around that degree. And the same will be true actually if you have planets or angles around 24 degrees Pisces, because that's another point that actually repeats with the second eclipse, which is the 29th of March. And again, if you've got planets or angles in any of the immutable signs, 24 degrees, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, and you can give it 1 or 2 degrees either side. So 26 degrees, for instance, 22 degrees. So coming back to this week, on the 2nd of March, Mercury also conjoins with Neptune in Pisces. Now, Mercury is currently still going forwards, and so is kind of moving onwards, still sort of going through its process, although it is still beginning to think about the retrograde and beginning to think about reflecting on things. However, it's literally the penultimate time that Mercury will conjoin with Neptune in Pisces during our lifetimes, because Neptune's about to move out of Pisces. So actually, just to skip ahead a little bit, the next time that happens and Mercury and Neptune get together, it's when Mercury is retrograde. Literally, it happens at 29:59 of Pisces, just hours before Neptune goes into Aries. And at that moment, weirdly, the sun is at 9 degrees Aries. So we come back to that point again. So Mercury with Neptune on Sunday, this is where we dream, where we think mystically. And it could suggest confused thinking, looking at things a bit too optimistically through rose-colored spectacles, that kind of thing. Or it could be genuine imagination and spiritual insight. It could be a creative process too. So if you've got creative projects to get on with, Sunday the 2nd is the day. However, the sun is challenging Jupiter. So we've got our solar energy challenged by Jupiter, planet of growth and expansion. So the question then is, can this growth opportunity come to fruition? And if we just have a quick look at the chart, actually, I'm going to just, actually, I'm not going to skip it forward because you can see it here. Here's the sun and here's Jupiter. And here we have Venus at that 10 degrees and Mercury conjoining with Neptune. Okay. So can the project come to fruition? That's the question. And there's a lot to be discussed, I think. Jupiter's in Gemini, so there's a lot to talk about. Both are immutable signs. Pisces and Gemini, both mutable. So there may be adaptation, things to change and reflect upon, information to collect. So it's possible that the coming to fruition, the manifestation, if you like, that you get with squares is entirely possible, but it needs to be worked through. And I think it's helped by the fact that Mercury in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini are actually in what we call mutual reception. They're in each other's signs. So there's an understanding there between the parties involved. Maybe a shared vision. It's just that we're trying to find ways to come to that shared vision, if you like, working through the issues. And then on the 3rd of March, Mercury, this planet of thought and communication, it sort of bounces into Aries, I think. Mercury is quite good at bouncing, a bit of a bouncer. There we are. And in Aries, Mercury is a lot more direct, suddenly a lot more focused. It's kind of losing that emotional kind of filter that it gets in Pisces. And Mercury in Aries tends to say what it thinks, not always with a lot of filter, although that can depend on other planets in the chart. But it's becoming goal-oriented now. It's thinking about goals and direction, and we're kind of mentally ploughing through any obstacles that we might have, because that's what Mercury in Aries does. Obstacles, what obstacles? And it kind of sees its way through. There's not so much shifting and shape-shifting there with that in Aries. It's much more, right, here we go. Although, again, Mars is still ruling Aries from Cancer, so that will give it an element of caution. And then we move on through the week, and on Friday, let's move that through to Friday, then we get a lovely trine between the Sun and Mars. So this is really nice, actually. And it's going to be emotional because the Sun's in Pisces at 17 degrees, Mars is in Cancer. It's positive, and it gives the opportunity for any difficulties that might have arisen with that square between the Sun and Jupiter to be resolved, I feel. Hurt feelings, perhaps. Anything that's kind of, especially in family issues, because, you know, there is that Mars in Cancer. Anything that's kind of residual and people have been clinging on to. Now is the time to actually just let that go, talk about it, resolve it, okay? And Mars is still proceeding cautiously. It's always quite cautious in Cancer. And it's looking forward, though, to the positive connection. This is almost like a precursor to the positive connection that Mars is going to make with Saturn at 24 degrees. There we are again. That's the second eclipse degree. And Mars and Saturn will make that connection at the beginning of April. And at that time, all these things that we've been kind of talking about and trying to get together during March will be starting to look a lot more structured and certain. So that's kind of the week ahead. Interesting stuff, and gets more interesting as time goes on. And before looking at why this is a special year and just reminding you about that, I'm just going to pause for a sec and say that if you're enjoying the content, please do hit like and subscribe. And maybe if you're feeling rich, treat me to a coffee. That would be appreciated too. Thank you. And moving on, I spoke earlier about this being a year of transition. So I'm going to stop the share there because we don't really need to have the week ahead up. Okay, so a year of transition, and that's due to the outer planets and Saturn all changing signs this year. I mean, technically Pluto actually changed signs last year, moving from Capricorn for the final time into Aquarius. You'll remember that was a big thing. So these outer planets moving into new signs does suggest major societal shifts, and we are beginning to see that, aren't we? I mean, goodness, you know, what's happening globally, really, I mean, we could not have predicted it. And these shifts do affect us too, because what happens globally, it can affect our jobs, it affects our lives, it affects whether we can sell our houses, all kinds of stuff. So the major planets, the big planets, are kind of the backdrop, the social fabric that our lives with the personal planets play out against. And the outer planets are making a shift from earth and water, which symbolize together sort of land and finance and business, that's earth, and feelings, emotions, sensitivity, spirituality in Pisces, and that's water, into fire and air signs, specifically Aries and Gemini and Aquarius. So fire and air are much more about goals and ideas. They're about the journey. They're about vision. And action, you know, in Aries. Who do we connect with? What's true? What do we believe? What are we going to do about it? How can we do something about it? Much more about vision, as I said, less about stability. So the planets that are piling up at the moment in Pisces, Saturn, Neptune, the North Node, really they signify the end of something. You know, this is the end of the zodiac, and this kind of big planets are coming to the end of the zodiac. So it's likely that this year, and probably next year too, will represent major transitions for lots of us on a personal level, as well as a social level. And in two or 3 years' time, I can just imagine us all actually sort of shaking ourselves down and wondering just how we got to where we are. It's going to be one of those times, you know. So to coin a phrase, move with the times. It's important to let this energy carry us with it, and to take up the opportunities when they arise, to be adaptable to the new situations. And March is important in this whole process because, as I said, it hosts 2 important eclipses. Venus and Mercury turn retrograde. There's the spring equinox, that happens every year. But then on the 30th, Neptune moves into Aries. So yeah, so pay attention this month, pay attention this week, and just kind of stay alert if you can. Stay alert to what's happening, stay alert to the opportunities. You know, read the news, however depressing it is, just watch what's going on and see where you fit into it and how you can adapt to make yourself, you know, just more useful, more in tune with the times. And if you're interested, by the way, into Neptune moving into Aries, check out the video that Terry and I recorded on that subject. It's just down below, so you can find it on the channel. So there we are. It's a busy week, and it's going to get busier as the month goes on. So join me next week for the full moon eclipse across Pisces and Virgo and Mercury retrograde. And that's it from me. So thanks very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Okay, bye-bye.